Good morning, everyone. Welcome back to Restricted Republic. You know, nothing should surprise me anymore. I shouldn't wake up and read articles that shouldn't shock me anymore. But then, the Washington Post puts out an opinion piece. And what they state in it is bone-chilling. It was hard to fathom the reality of what was being said. We'll do a simple dissection of the article, and you too be scratching your head. How is this allowed? How is this okay? How can someone ask Biden to use forceful action against and mobilization to overwhelm the threat? You know what the threat is? Oh, it will be near and dear to your heart. I promise you that. This is not acceptable. And I'm going to read it in great detail to you. And we're going to cover exactly why this is a monumental issue that just simply can't be allowed to continue any further. But before I get there, I'm going to take a deep breath. It's just ridiculous with what you see that's happening in the news right now. The Russian threat, the Chinese threat to Taiwan, and what's Biden going to do about it? You know what he's going to do about it? Nothing. Nothing. I'm going to cover a part of that at Restricted Republic here in just a few minutes. First, if you haven't subscribed to my channel here, please do. Just take a few seconds. The arrow will point to where you need to go. But then again, at Restricted Republic, where we air the things that either we can't air anywhere else or we can't cover in the way it needs to be covered, we're going to give you a very special discount code today. That's Christmas 21. 45 days for $1. Check out the platform. Check out what Lisa Haven and I are doing there to provide you the news, again, that matters, makes a difference. I promise, once you're there, you're not going to go anywhere else for that news that matters. But now let's get back to this broadcast. So I'm sure you're asking what's got Justice all worked up today. This opinion piece, Washington Post, the big, ugly truth that Biden cannot conceal from the world about the U.S. Now, this is on the heels of, and by time of airing, this summit would have started, the Summit for Democracy, here on the United States Department of the State. A 2-day summit where Joe Biden is going to rescue democracy. Many opinions on this. This entire political article is written about the struggles that Biden will have during this summit. The article kicks off. Joe Biden has never put much stock in America's self-assigned mission of fostering democracy abroad. As a freshman senator half a century ago, he opposed the Vietnam War, not because he regarded it as immoral, but because he didn't think the United States could reform the autocratic regime in Saigon. Years later, he did not expect much of similar efforts in Iraq or Afghanistan. Biden seems to have been mugged by reality. Unlike his predecessors of whatever persuasion, the president has taken office at a moment when a democratic future in the United States and in some important allied countries can no longer be taken for granted. Or as Secretary of State Antony Blinken told me last month, in every conversation I've heard him have with a foreign leader, the centerpiece of the conversation has been that he sees the fundamental struggle of our time as a face-off between autocracy and democracy. We're going to get to that quickly here. You'll read all the broadcasts, and this one on Freedom House, Democracy Under Siege. Everything's gone backwards. Don't worry, I'll get to the fundamental difference between democracy and what the United States actually is. It's 100 years of brainwashing that's gone on. But according to them, we've gotten incrementally, progressively worse over time. 2020 being the worst year. And why, you might ask? We could thank COVID for that. It has consolidated power to those autocrats, individual leaders, such as the two on your screen, smiling, probably laughing at Biden, whose empty threats they know mean nothing. And when you see the State Department and Antony Blinken telling our diplomats, it's okay, go ahead and admit U.S. flaws. Tell everyone how non-powerful the U.S. is. You wonder why we have the disaster we have now. Which goes back to this article now. And we're going to cover what was said within it, why I am so worked up, and how they closed this article. I promise you're going to be seeing red just like I was. If Biden tells the truth to the world, it might sound like this. Our homegrown threat to democracy comes primarily from a dangerously radicalized right wing and from the cynical, anti-democratic accommodations of it by only one of our major political parties, the GOP. If Biden tells the world the truth, the GOP is responsible for the overthrowing of democracy as a dangerously radicalized right-wing movement. That's what that states, clearly. It's hard to believe they can even print these words. Biden, who said his own party has proved utterly unable or even unwilling to take the actions necessary to safeguard against the threat. What actions? What are you calling for there, Washington Post? And he would admit the problems are also structural, that safeguarding is frustrated by anti-majoritarian features of the system itself, and his own party is failing to correct those as well. So we'll step back to this Politico article very quickly. And when something Antony Blinken had said, there is a call to action, aspects of this that also is part of our summoning of better angles, which the president strongly believes continues to resonate powerfully with most Americans. Yeah, we've seen your approval ratings. Nothing's resonating with Americans. But don't worry, the press has got your back, right, Joe? We'll get there shortly, what you just requested they do. Things have gotten lost along the way. This is a moment to try to refocus our fellow citizens on what makes us exceptional. It does speak to something that continues to unite us and that people aspire to, even despite their frustrations. But no amount of summoning of better angles, or refocusing on what's exceptional about U.S. democracy will change what's happened. This is back to the Washington Post piece now. This seems to presume Republicans can be persuaded to reverse their course, whether by Biden's soaring rhetoric or by public pressure that would materialize from it. Right now, much of the GOP has decided that an effort by its own leader, Donald Trump, to overthrow U.S. democracy through corrupt pressure on many government actors and then through mob violence doesn't require a national response. Are you feeling the tenor? Are you feeling the temperature of where this opinion piece is taking you? Well, it's about to take a bone-chilling turn. It gets worse. So I'll continue forward. And Republicans are entrenching voter suppression everywhere. Republicans are entrenching voter suppression everywhere. They are justifying all this by feeding GOP voters lies about integrity, inviting them to tell themselves about anti-democratic tactics and even subverting elections losses. Are there appropriate recourse? We could be protecting the system from these threats, but we're not. Once again, I think he's called everyone in the GOP a threat multiple times. He's setting the stage for what he's calling for here. They just need to stay out of anything involving elections whatsoever. They need to allow our system to continue forward unabated. And if you stand in the way, they're going to call you out too, even if you're a Democrat. Kristen Sinema accidentally reveals the huge hole in her filibuster defense. It's not only Sinema, though. It's Manchin, too, the author goes after. They could pledge that the party will end the filibuster, then pass voting rights protections, revise the Electoral Count Act against a future coup, install new safeguards against political manipulation of law enforcement, expedite judicial process to disarm the stonewalling of congressional oversight, and even reform the Supreme Court. So basically overturn all our systems of government the way they stand. But it's the radical right wing that's the issue right now, according to this author. It's the radical right wing that's the issue. But Washington Post is no stranger to articles like this. Trump allies work to place supporters in key election posts across the country, spurring fears about future vote challenges. Well, the GOP was not allowed in a lot of those stations for many, 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 many years. And so now they are. But now it's a problem. So you should have sole and single responsibility and oversight of all election polling places everywhere for the remainder of history. This is the reality of what they're requesting here. So to be clear, Biden can accomplish constructive things. He wants to signal that the United States won't coddle dictators or write off human rights abroad. No, we're just going to politically boycott the next Olympics, but We're going to still allow our athletes to go because, we really don't want to upset ye, but we're not going to coddle dictators. They seriously just wrote that and expect America to believe that. Maybe they've missed the Russian movements near Ukraine, which we're going to cover in the second part of this broadcast. Maybe they've missed in response to that tough call Biden had. Troops not on the table for Ukraine. Then how are you going to defend them? You got to throw sticks at them? Say, no, Putin. Bad, Putin. Because that's what Biden's proposing ultimately. Sanctions that Putin doesn't care about. You've already given in everything anyway. It's of no consequence, but that's not the only war that's brewing, right? Pentagon warns China is preparing for military campaign takeover of Taiwan. What are we going to do there, Biden? You got to run for the hills? Because that's what you're going to do. Because your own Senate is demanding, how are we going to defend? And you're not giving them clear-cut answers, but you've never had clear-cut answers. But you want America to believe you're tough on China and you're tough on Russia. So let's get back to this article, The Big Ugly Truth That Biden Cannot Conceal from the World. By the way, your author, Greg Sargent. And here's where things take a unique turn. Outside of this article, about the summit, about things you can't take for granted anymore, about Antony Blinken and his statement in every conversation, all we're focused on is this autocracy and democracy. This autocracy ruled by a single leader, democracy ruled by a form of government which people choose the leaders. Not to forget that even below democracy, one of the number one frequently asked questions is the United States democracy or a republic? Democracy versus constitutional republic, 100 years of brainwashing shoved in people's heads. There is a difference. According to Merriam-Webster, the United States is both a democracy and a republic. Democracies and republics are both forms of government which supreme power resides in the citizens. Yeah, I'm going to do it. I'm going to test you guys now. In the comments, what are we? What in actuality are we? And how does it function? What is the difference? Hint, the Constitution plays a really big part of it. But now it happens. The Washington Post sends a red alert to all patriots. Not to them. I'm the one sending the red alert to all patriots. Admittedly, the answer to this isn't obvious, but casting the problem as a failure of persuasion, as if Biden needs only find the magic words to tamp down domestic autocracy or inspire a popular mobilization to overwhelm the threat, may only facilitate this dodge, giving Biden something public to say, enabling further evasion of the need to commit to forceful action against it. Inspire a popular mobilization to overwhelm the threat. Further evasion of the need to commit to forceful action against it. I just read this opinion piece stating clearly this author calling the threat to democracy the radical right wing, the GOP. The fact that they are intruding themselves in the election process, although legally they are now allowed to be there. Stating that there's been no effort to overturn any other control of the government other than the Democratic Party, and that should simply not be allowed, and the Democrats aren't doing enough to overturn it. And then at the very end, putting those words that most would miss, they just breeze right over it. Mobilization to overwhelm the threat and forceful action against it. What are they calling for there? If I called for anything similar, even remotely, 10% there, I'd be banned and shut down immediately, but not the Washington Post, of course not. The one who loves to report on this war on democracy and how it's succeeding. So Texas must be tamped down, that redistricting must be stopped. Merrick Garland's going to step in and fix it all. But if you report negatively, you get called in by the administration. All the press gets called in. Hey, folks, We'd like some more favorable coverage. We don't want you to report on the facts or reality of what's happening. We're going to request that you give more favorable coverage to old Joe. Help him out a little bit here. He's not looking so good. He's failing miserably. Everything he's pushing through is getting voted down. He's losing in the courts. So instead of reporting on the reality of a failed presidency, could you please do me a huge favor and just give some, fluffy, fun articles about Joe and how amazing he is? Because you're not manipulating the public opinion enough. So do your darn job and manipulate like we have taught you to do. Because that's what's ultimately being said here. And this hatchet, this bone-chilling message put out by the Washington Post, the big ugly truth that Biden can't conceal from the world about the U.S., is something that has been allowed. Only by one side is allowed to do such pieces. And so if you need more evidence, you will always find it here for exactly what the left wants. And what they want is all of us silenced, powerless, defeated, and controlled. And they will stop at nothing until that conclusion is reached. Now, if you want a voice against this, please support me. Please support Lisa's efforts. Please get to Restricted Republic. Take us up on the discount code right now at monthly checkout. Christmas 21. 45 days for $1. Show us that we matter. Show us that what we're broadcasting to you is of great concern and directionally accurate. And you do that by supporting us at Restricted Republic. I love you all. Can't thank you enough for being here. Until next time, Godspeed and God bless. Justus Knight, signing out.